I asked a bunch of pro game developers their tips for beginner game devs, and here's what they said. This video is sponsored by .fun domains, but more on that later. And also, if you like roguelike deck builders, wishlist my game Castlemancer over on Steam. Thanks.
For a lot of other small indie game developers that are hoping to maybe eventually come to PAX West, do you have any tips for them, any tricks you've picked up over the years?
I would highly recommend doing game jams. Game jams are 2 or 3 day hackathons where you get to make a game based off a theme and see where it goes. But the great thing about game jams is it throws you right into the project, and so you get a crash course on how to make a game, how to finish a game. You learn so much out of it, how to work with teammates. So game jams.
A lot of the people who watch these videos are either completely solo indie devs or small teams, 2 to 4 people. Do you have any tips for them to reach a success or eventually come to PAX West like you're here doing?
Be cool.
Be cool.
And I guess also be confident in your product. It's not every day I feel confident about my product. But I sure feel like I should have some confidence after this event.
Do you have any tips for them?
I would say start making games. There's a lot of really simple tools out there that you can get started with. There's no code tools. There's sort of things like Unity, which I'm using, that you can really get started pretty easily with. And just the more time you spend doing it, the better you'll get at it.
That's awesome. Do you have any tips for small indie studios, single indie game developers, for whether it's their first game, their second game? Any tips regarding that?
A lot of tips. I'll try to keep it simple. First thing, always start marketing right away. Put your game on Twitter or Mastodon or Blue Sky or whatever thing that you're using. Get that information out, get feedback immediately. Second, just make stuff. Don't get hung up on whether it's the perfect solution. Make it, get it out there, prove it, improve it, improve it, improve it. Just keep doing that because you'll learn as you go how to make things better. If you get hung up on the perfection of the game, you'll never get anything released.
So do you have any tips for potentially intro-level indie game developers or people working on their first or their second project in small teams? Do you have any tips for them to maybe eventually come to PAX West one day like you're here now?
I would say the first thing is maybe try to get some experience somewhere. Get somebody to pay for you to learn, basically, so that you don't have to learn on your own projects that you are funding yourself, basically, right? So that I would say that's the very first step. And next is to find a team that has the drive within themselves to do what's required to make the game happen. The first one is the hardest by far.
And do you have any tips for smaller teams about community building for their new IPs or their new games?
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the most important part as community management goes is to engage daily as well. I think one of the most important part is to basically hear feedbacks from the community. Try to give as much as possible to the community as well. One of the things that we did is to keep our kind of updates throughout for the community, give them updates about the platforms that we're building, the games that we're building. So that's I think one of the essential parts.
Other than that, in terms of just kind of general advice and guidelines, I always tell people, look for the people that have passion for what you're trying to do. If you can find a couple people that really see the vision and want to help you make a cool game, it's worth more than anything else you can do as a solo developer. And one thing that in this industry I've seen is that nobody succeeds on their own. So if you're a solo dev, really start to look for the artists, the marketing folks, the content creators that can help you to spread the word about your game, to make it pretty, to make it work well. Because that's been many years in the works.
For a lot of beginner, either indie game devs or completely solo indie game devs, do you have any tips for them?
Find a day job that you like. Because it really, people say it has to be about, it's more about the journey than the destination. It really has to kind of be about the journey when it comes to this stuff, because you're not in control really of if you're looking for a publisher, for example, or if you're looking for funding, you don't really have control of when that will happen. Or if you're looking for your game to blow up on social media, you just don't know.
It's so hard.
So, you have to find some kind of a balance.
So since you're the artist, do you have any like just tips, tricks for them, either when it's first starting out, getting into a space like this?
Man, I think the first thing is just don't give up, keep pushing. It's not going to be easy at the start, and start iterating early. So as early as you can start testing things and how they work together, the better. I think we probably waited a little bit too long on that. So that's another big tip I think that people could use.
For any like aspiring indie game developers, solo indie devs, do you have any tips for them saying, you just said like, hey, this is like another, basically a full-time job in addition to your other
it's like
job.
a double job basically.
Yeah.
I'd say if you don't live and breathe it, you're going to get left behind.
Mm-hmm.
You really have to be all in, and you have to be ready to make the sacrifice to kind of live this kind of life. It's not something. If you're not going to commit and go all in on it, then don't even bother.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to be pessimistic or shoot people down, but that's the amount of effort that is required to kind of compete, especially considering how competitive gaming's become over the last couple of years. So that's the best advice I could give, is just live and breathe the work. So
now we all know that user acquisition is amongst one of the hardest challenges when releasing an indie game. You could have built the most beautiful or fun game out there, but if no one knows about it or can find it, then all of that hard work could go down the drain. Well, that's where this video's sponsor can come in handy, .fun domains. Having an easily searchable and memorable domain name can be essential when trying to market your indie game. To just have one place to drive all traffic that could then link to your Steam page, itch.io store page, socials, newsletter, whatever it may be. And to stand out amongst the crowd, a .fun domain name is a great option, especially for an indie game. For example, you can check out my upcoming indie game at castlemancer.fun. Visit www.get.fun, where you can grab your .fun domain, and use code castlemancer at checkout to get 90% off. Thank you for .fun domains for supporting the channel.
Do you have any tips for aspiring indie game developers, whether they're solo or maybe they're like on a small team of like 2 to 4 people or something like that? Anything that's helped you?
I think the biggest one is to try to make something condensed, something small, so you can
actually finish it.
You can actually finish it. But that's for the smaller things. But if you are aiming for something bigger, still start small, so you can find someone to help you out later.
You want to avoid the scope creep and stuff like that.
Yeah, of course. It's a big one.
So do you have any tips for someone that's maybe they want to be an environmental artist or even just game development in general that's trying to get into the space? Maybe they work on a small team, maybe they're solo. Do you have any tips that has helped you throughout your career?
Sure. I mean, so one of the really cool things about being in the art space, especially since I started, so I've been in the industry for a little over 10 years now. Wow, and so that space has really changed over time. And one of the really, really cool things that is available now is there are so many resources online, such as Blender being a free program, and just tutorials and stuff like that you can find. So if you're looking to get into this side of the industry, really take advantage of some of those free resources available to you, and just have that drive to like keep trying new things, keep learning new stuff, and you'll get there.
For maybe those solo indie game developers that are first starting out, or maybe they're working on a small team, 2 to 4 people, maybe they have full-time jobs, do you have any tips for them for keeping that motivation like you mentioned earlier, or just trying to even get more attention to their game and eventually come to a convention like this?
Yeah, I think you can do it. Like, it just takes, like, if you don't know how to do something, you can like learn how to do it. And I think I do think that the more time you put into something, the higher the chances of it being good will be. It's just like a natural like correlation, and like it's going to be hard to like continue to make something bad if you just are dedicated to something.
Dedicating what hours.
So eventually, I think like that magic will kind of start to like percolate in the project, and you just gotta stick with it and kind of like have faith that like it'll work out eventually. But.
So do you have any tips or tricks for people that want to get into sort of quest design or anything like that, or what has helped you throughout your career?
I'm a quest designer working in the industry for already 10 years at this point.
Wow, that's awesome.
I have a track record of working on Witcher 3 and Cyberpunk 2077.
That is awesome. That's
as a
so
quest
sick.
designer.
Yeah.
And yeah, if you love RPGs, there are ways to get into industry. You can either start as a QA if you don't have any experience, but for most people I would recommend just going indie and doing your own games. So you have a lot of different engines available right now that are pretty easy to use, and if you're focused on narrative storytelling, there are many easy to get into tools that you can start with for your journey as a quest designer.
Do you have any tips for people watching this that may want?
Yeah, absolutely. Just don't focus too hard on being perfect. If you make mistakes, That's how you learn. So and you have to take those sorts of risks.
Do you have any tips for aspiring solo indie game developers or small teams that you've found useful?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually a concept that comes from the software engineering world, which is the idea of not made here as a fallacy, which is the tendency for some organizations to want to rebuild stuff that already exists just because it wasn't made by you.
Reinventing the wheel.
Exactly. And that you should not do that is like something that gets drilled into you in software engineering, that if someone's already built a solution for something you've tried to solve, use it. Just use it. And that is the advice that I give to solo devs is like, use the tools that are available to you. Use the systems that come with Unreal or the stuff that's on the marketplace. Like, figure out what the unique thing is that you're going to have to make yourself. But if it's not that, just go get it.
So do you have any tips or tricks for people that are trying to get into the kind of creative directing place that you are in your career, or maybe some other small indie studios that are trying to reach this success or level that Lost Eidolongs has?
Well, the one thing is that you just have to put everything out, not like keep it to yourself.
Yeah.
So some people don't, tell you everything because maybe these guys may steal my idea or something like that. But
they don't say everything.
I just want to put it out, and you have to just put it in the sentence right.
That's all for me. I hope you found this video useful. If you like kind of the interview style of video that I was going for, I did a previous video where I asked a bunch of the same game developers what their biggest challenges actually were. So if you're interested in that, definitely check it out. If you like game development or tech, consider giving me a subscribe. Like this video to help your boy out. We do a bad British accent at the end of every video. That's all from me, and hopefully I see you in another one. Bye-bye.